Hi everyone, welcome to grammar lesson number 21. So continuing on with our review for words to watch out for, we're going to be covering parts 7 and 8 today, which go over words to watch out for 25 through 31 in total. So starting with 25 through 28, which is part 7, we have led versus led, like and as if and as though, and like and such as. So usually when I do the reviews, I don't include the example sentences that go on each individual slide, but because this particular lesson is a bit more confusing for 2, 3, and 4, I've left the example sentences in, so they're basically the same from the lesson themselves, but the practice sentences at the end will be different. But I just wanted to include the original sentences in the slides to show you guys the differences between the words. But for led and led, the verb led, opposite of follow, the verb lead, opposite of follow, forms its past tense and past participle in led, unlike read, whose past tense and participle are also spelt read. The noun lead is the name for the very well-known heavy metal. So the two words that are pronounced the same here are the past tense of lead, which is LED, lead, and then this word lead, spelled the same as lead, but this is meaning, like what you write with what goes into your mechanical pencils, the heavy metal itself. And then we have lead as a verb meaning opposite of follow, so to take charge or to basically to take charge. But the two words here that often get confused in terms of pronunciation are the two words that are pronounced the same, which is led and led here, and then lead and led are the same word but same definition, meanings, but different tenses of the same word. So next we have like and as. So the use of like in place of as is a very common error. Like is a preposition meaning resembling or similar to. It is used to introduce an adjective phrase that asserts a likeliness between two nouns or pronouns. So for example, if we have two of these sentences, we have she wore a hat like a basket of flowers, and there's no business like show business. So if you haven't noticed, the phrases following the word like in bold in both these sentences is not a complete sentence, and rather, like we said here, it's used to introduce an adjective phrase that asserts likeliness. So these are just phrases and they're not complete sentences, because a basket of flowers, show business, those are just some words and there's no subject and verb, so it's not a complete sentence. So that's why it makes sense and it's grammatically correct to have the word like preceding these. So going into a more detailed description about these two sentences, so the phrase like a basket of flowers is an adjective modifying the word hat. Like show business modifies business. Whenever you are tempted to use the word like, try substituting resembling and see if your sentence still works. What about these? So that goes on to the next slide. But here, this is supposed to be the word resembling. Sorry, there's no italicizing to differentiate that. But here you can say she wore a hat resembling a basket of flowers, or there's no show business resembling show business. Well, those aren't often used or heard of. The word resembling can be replaced with the word like here, and it should have the same meaning that the original sentence intended to have. So again, when you're using like in terms of comparison, you want to make sure that the words following like are a phrase and not a complete sentence. So continuing on with like and as, we have she dances like a crazy person, or he breathes like a galloping horse. So here we're in a tricky territory. It might seem that a phrase really modifies the verb, in which case they should be adverbial clauses of comparison, quote, as a galloping horse breathes. But in fact, the phrases are best seen as predicate adjectives, even though the word dances and breathes don't seem like linking verbs, because they are meant to describe the object. So when can't you use like? So here in the sentence, I wish I could speak loudly like my friend does, is incorrect, because like never introduces a clause, only a phrase. So as is what we want to use here. As is a subordinating conjunction used to introduce a clause of comparison with the meaning in the way that. So instead, the sentence in its correct form should be, I wish I could speak loudly as my friend does, rather than I wish I could speak I wish I could speak loudly like my friend does. So now we have like and as if and as though. So this error is even more common than the error between like and as. So if we have the sentence, Miss Sarah looked like she was going to cry, like is a preposition, remember it cannot introduce a clause, use as if or as though. So here we have she was going to cry, which is it's a clause, it's a full sentence. I try to mix those two words. So here if we have she was going to cry, full sentence, subject, verb, we can't have like introducing this. It can only introduce a phrase, as I mentioned, with the differences between like and as, just those two words. So now that we know that like is a preposition and it can't introduce a clause, we can change this to either as if or as though. So I have the same sentence that we had up above, and corrected in two ways. So we could say Miss Sarah looked as if she was going to cry, and Miss Sarah looked as though she was going to cry. So as if and as though, basically interchangeable in this case, as long as we don't have like preceding this clause. And then lastly, we're looking at the differences between like and such as. So what is wrong with the following statement? Julie won't eat meats like pork, lamb, and beef. So try plugging in the word resembling for like and you will see the problem. So if we say Julie won't eat meats resembling pork, lamb, and beef, that just doesn't make sense. Pork, lamb, and beef are not meats similar to the ones Julie won't eat. They are examples of the kinds of meats she won't eat. Such as is a handy preposition for this situation. So the correct sentence would be Julie won't eat meats such as pork, lamb, and beef. Or we have another sentence, the number of explosions in action movies such as Mission Impossible 2 often seems excessive. So if we're using the word like here, which again is incorrect, you don't want to use like. If we're saying like, we're kind of basically saying the meaning of resembling something or similar to something. However, in these specific sentences where we're switching out the word like for such as, we usually have examples following. So we're basically, sorry I keep repeating myself, we are listing examples rather than stating things that are similar to what we're talking about. Because literally, pork, lamb, and beef are examples of meats that Julie won't eat rather than meats that are similar to or resembling the meats that she won't eat. So now moving on to practice sentences covering part 7. Number 1, Paul looked like he was going to scream. So if we go back to looking at the differences between like and as if, we know that like cannot introduce a clause and it can only introduce a phrase. So he was going to scream is a full sentence because it has a subject and a verb. So rather than saying like he was going to scream, we want to have as if because we're introducing a clause and not a phrase. So that's why the full sentence would read, Paul looked as if he was going to scream. Sentence number 2, ironically, Daisy is allergic to many flowers like tulips, roses, and daisies. So here we're listing examples of flowers that Daisy is allergic to rather than saying flowers that are similar or resembling the ones that she is allergic to. So the correct the correct word to use here is such as, and then the following sentence would read, ironically, Daisy is allergic to many flowers such as tulips, roses, and daisies. So these 3 flowers are literally examples of the flowers that she's allergic to. Sentence number 3, I wish I could sing confidently like Una. So, like, remember, never introduces a clause and only a phrase. So as is the word we want to use here because it's a subordinated conjunction and it's used to introduce a clause of comparison, meaning in the way that. So basically you're saying, even though it's not written, you wish that you could sing confidently in the way that Una does. So simple way to correct the sentence would just be, I wish I could sing confidently as Una does. Sentence number 4, the size 0.5 lead Mark needed was sold out at his local stationery store. So Led here, spelled L-E-D, is the past tense of the verb lead, meaning opposite of follow, to take charge. And while it is pronounced the same exact way as the correct word L-E-A-D, we want to use the word that's spelled L-E-A-D because that means the metal itself, which is what we're referring to. Sentence number 5, Jenny seemed like she was going to run off with the bike. So again, like cannot introduce a clause. Again, it can't introduce a full sentence. She was going to run off with the bike can stand by itself. So it's a full sentence and it makes sense on its own. That's why we have to have as though, or you can also have as if she was going to run off with the bike. I just chose as though, but again, when you're differentiating between like and as if / as though, as if and as though are basically interchangeable. So if you put as if there, then it's perfectly fine. So sentence number 5, Jenny seemed as though she was going to run off with the bike, is the correct, one of the 2 correct word sentences for sentence number 5. Sentence number 6, despite being very muscular, Damien hates activities like weightlifting, wrestling, and swimming. So this is very similar to sentence number 2. It's the same problem. If we're introducing examples, we don't want to say like because that means that we're saying whatever follows is resembling or similar to what we're talking about. Rather, since we're listing examples, we want to say despite being very muscular, Damien hates activities such as weightlifting, wrestling, and swimming. So now moving on to the next set of sentences. I wish I could speak confidently like my friend Sarah. So again, I feel like it's really useful to just repeat this definition that like never introduces the clause, only a phrase. As is what we want to use here because as is a subordinated conjunction used to introduce a clause of comparison. So here we want to say, I wish I could speak confidently in the way that my friend Sarah does. So to fix this sentence, we can write it as, I wish I could speak confidently as my friend Sarah does. Sentence number 2, my coach taught me to lead the band with my head held high. I actually pronounced this wrong. This should be pronounced led. But the correct sentence is with the word lead, the verb meaning opposite of follow, and then the word led incorrectly used in sentence number 2 is the past tense of the verb lead. Sentence number 3, she wore her skirt as a towel. So here, again, like introduces a phrase. So a towel is not a clause and it can't stand by itself. So that's why we want to have like introduce the words a towel. So that's why the correct sentence here is she wore her skirt like a towel. Sentence number 4, Cassie looked like she was going to faint. We want to say that Cassie looked as if or as though she was going to faint because the word like cannot introduce a clause. So because she was going to faint is a full sentence, it's a clause, we want to say as if. And then the last example sentence we have for this part 7 is Max hates Thanksgiving foods like turkey, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce. So again, we're listing examples rather than similar items or things that resemble the foods that he doesn't like. So that's why we want to say Max hates Thanksgiving foods such as turkey, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce. So that covers the practice sentences for part 7. Now moving on to part 8. This is a bit shorter. It's only 3. So we're going to be looking at the differences between due to, because of, because, or on account of. The reason is because, and being that. So I'm just going to give a heads up because there's only 3 rules to go over really. It can get a bit repetitive with the practice sentences, but that is one of the ways to really nail these rules into your head and make sure you guys don't forget them. So for the first rule that we're looking at, another widespread usage issue involves these connectives, which all express a cause. Due to is often incorrectly used to modify a verb. So due is an adjective meaning owing. An adjective cannot modify a verb. So you might consider turning the phrase into a clause and using the subordinating conjunction because. So I'll go more into depth with examples relating to this because it is a bit vague without the specific examples after them, but those are all in the full lesson that goes over part 8, more in depth. So moving on to rule number 2, we have the reason is because. So this phrasing is due to carelessness that kept the writer from noticing the redundancy. So both the reason is and the word because express a cause. So basically, you're being redundant and repetitive if you're saying the reason is and because in the same sentence because they mean the same exact thing. So just say the reason for X is Y or X is because of Y. And you'll see a lot of that as well in the practice sentences. Next we have being that. So never use being that as a way to express a cause. Use since or because instead. So I'm sure you've often heard that whenever you see the word being, especially in like standardized tests, like answer choices or whatnot, you should be very wary of them, and they're usually incorrect. So the word being is not always incorrect. It really just depends on how it's being used. Just like that, that's a correct way of using being. You want to just remember that being that to express the cause is always incorrect. You just want to say either because or since. So now that we've covered all those very short rules, we're going to be going on to the practice sentences for part 8. So sentence number 1, being that Annie forgot to buy eggs, she couldn't make her banana pancakes. So being that is just incorrect. I don't know if I didn't give a reason. It wasn't listed when I was making this lesson plan, but just know that being that to express a cause is always incorrect. So that's why we want to say since Annie forgot to buy eggs, she couldn't make her banana pancakes. You can also say because Annie forgot to buy her eggs, but I'm sure you've often been told that starting a sentence with the word because is not really good formal writing. So you could avoid that if you want, just to be safe. But again, I would just start with since Andy forgot to buy eggs. It just kind of flows better and it's more natural than saying because as the start of the sentence. Sentence number 2, the reason Ruby is upset is because she lost her phone. So here we have the reason and is because. So the reason and because are both saying the same exact thing. So that's why we want to say Ruby is upset because she lost her phone. Or we could say the reason Ruby is upset the reason here wouldn't make sense. Yeah, you would just have the reason, Ruby is upset because she lost her phone. Sentence number 3, Jamie and Chris were fighting due to arguing. So this relates to rule number 1 of part 8, which was a bit vague, as I mentioned earlier. But basically, due to is often used incorrectly to modify a verb. So here, due to is modifying arguing. And we don't want to have a verb there, so that's why we want to say Jamie and Chris were fighting. Get rid of the due to and just say because of an argument. Or you can just say because they argued or because they were arguing. Sentence number 4, the reason Shirley ran out of money is because she has a test tomorrow morning. Sorry, I just realized the 2 sentences. I forgot to change this first part. It should be is because of her wasteful spending. But here the correct sentence is the reason Shirley ran out of money is her wasteful spending. So here this is what I was trying to implement in sentence number 2, but the patterns didn't really work out with the sentence. So you can either just say X is because of Y, or you can say the reason X is Y. So here, that is the example right here. The reason Charlie ran out of money is her wasteful spending. You're not going to have is because in this sentence because if we have the reason and because in the same sentence, you're being redundant. Sentence number 5, being that he was sick all last week, Nate couldn't finish his assignments. So again, being that used to express a cause is always incorrect. So we want to have since he was sick all last week, Nate couldn't finish his assignments. Sentence number 6, the drive-in movie was canceled due to fog. So again, due to is not going to be used to modify a verb. So we want to say the drive-in movie was canceled because of fog. So just because we're only going over 3 rules and it's really just an easy fix for a lot of them. I'm doing 3 more practice sentences. So sentence number 1, being that I didn't eat all day, I was starving by dinner time. Again, being that is always incorrect when using to express a clause. So because I didn't eat all day, I was starving by dinner time. Sentence number 2, Larry was late on his first day of school due to traffic. So again, due to, we don't want to modify a verb, so we want to just say Larry was late on his first day of school on account of traffic. Or you could also just say because of traffic, but here, if you just want to spice it up, it was also in the title of number 1. You can use because of, because, or on account of. Oh, sorry, just on account of, yeah. Of traffic. So, and then the last sentence we're going over is the reason Serena tripped is because she didn't see the ledge in front of her. So again, having the reason and because in the same sentence is being redundant. We just want to say Serena tripped because she didn't see the ledge in front of her. So that wraps up today's lesson and all the practice sentences for part 8. So if you guys have any questions, do leave them, and I'll see you guys next week. Thank you. Oh, sorry, later this week. Thank you.